All right, it's Ms. Burvis again. Okay, we have finished our story. I really do hope you enjoyed the abridged version of The Fall of the House of Usher. It really is a shortened version, but it does still give you the essence of the story. All right, I want us to look at the questions. So look on page 16 of your packet. I'm going to start at the back and then go back up and work through the other ones. Okay, so we're looking as a character as the narrator. So in this case, one thing that we typically do with Edgar Allan Poe is he is one of our writers who introduced the unreliable narrator, in the fact that we don't really know the narrator's mental state. Okay? So we don't know if the narrator is reliable or not. And so, as it says in the first paragraph of author's craft, because the narrator is the one telling the story, readers must decide if they can trust the narrator to tell the truth. To determine the narrator's reliability, readers must pay attention to the narrator's thoughts, actions, and interpretations. In The Fall of House of Usher, the narrator is a dynamic character whose changes advance the plot. Remember, we've talked about dynamic character before. They change significantly. When the reader first meets him, his descriptions of the actions of others seem reliable. But then as the story goes on, we're not so sure if he's reliable anymore. And then it gives you this excerpt, okay? It appeared to me that some very remote portion of the mansion there came indistinctly to my ears what might have been, in this exact similarity of character, the echo, but a stifled and dulled one, certainly, of the very cracking and ripping sound which Sir Lancelot had so peculiarly described. So that is a section from where he's reading the story where Ethelred, where he's reading the Mad Tryst. Okay? So then look at your chart. All right, you've got text example, which is textual evidence. Then you've got a column for reliable, question mark, and effect on the plot. So find 3 examples that reveal whether or not the narrator is reliable. Okay? So your 3 examples may be totally different from someone else's. You may have some that you believe that he is reliable, some where you believe he's not. But on this first column, that's where you'll put your textual evidence. All right, I would say page number, paragraph, and maybe the first few lines of the evidence that you're using, the first few words, rather, okay? Or you can write page number here and then highlight it in your packet. That's perfectly fine, too. Okay? And then reliable. So that's going to be yes or no. Is he reliable or not? And then the effect on the plot. What do you think this text example, what effect does it have on the plot? Okay? Does it move the plot along in some way? Does it take it in a different direction? Does it make you think the narrator's crazy? Does it make you think the narrator is reliable? What does it do? And then if we look on page 17, okay? Now these are context clues for vocabulary, okay? So what you're doing on here is looking at the bolded words or phrases, and then you're going to identify the meaning and write a sentence to demonstrate your understanding of the word. I'd like you to try to do these without looking up the word, but honestly, these are sentiment's not really an older word, but it's not, think sentimental. And then you have temperament, sincerity, malady, and apathy. So if you need to look up the words, I don't have a problem. I would like you to try to make an original sentence rather than one that someone gives you online, so that I know that even if you look up the word, that you understand what it means. All right, the comprehension check. Now, these are where you use textual evidence. So at the beginning of the story, the narrator's word choice creates a mood of gloom and oppression. How does the narrator sustain and develop this mood as the story continues? So on this one, you could do it like a race writing and just give me 2 or 3 examples, okay? So it'd be like a R&A where you say whether he does or does not develop the mood of oppression and gloom. And then give me 2 or 3 examples of how the narrator's word choice does that. So remember, it's the word choice. So it's what words he uses, like when we talked about melancholy and we talked about at the very beginning how it was oppressive. So all of that. Oh, that radiation of gloom that we talked about. Okay. Then number 2, how does the mood contribute to the suspense of the story? What other elements of the story create suspense? All right, this one is not really a race writing. This one, I just want you to give me your opinion. How does the mood contribute to the suspense of the story? So think about the mood. And then what other elements of the story create suspense? So is it some of the dialogue? Is it the story, the mad twist? So what else happens in the story that creates suspense? The plot itself, okay? How does Poe use the house as a character? I would like you to try to do this as a race writing and give me 2 examples. So it will be your R and a C and E, a C and E, and a final E. Or you might do an R and a C, C, E. Either way is fine with me, okay? All right, now look back in the story and you've got these numbered in your packet. Like on page 1, you've got the question about word choice, and also, not page 1, it's actually page 6, and then the question about figurative language. So look at your questions along the side. Then you have on page 7, I want you to answer based on its opening paragraph. How would you describe the tone of this story? Okay. And then on page 8, you have the inference based on the narrator's description of the house. What inferences can you make about the family? Okay, so what does the house tell you about the family? And remember, at this point, you're looking at what state the house is in. Remember, we talked about how it was obviously at one time this grand mansion, but it had kind of fallen into disrepair. It needed some work. And then on page 8 at the bottom, the point of view question. How does the narrator of the story view Usher in his home? So decide what you believe there. And then on page 9, you have the question, what do you learn about the character from his own words in paragraph 7? I think we already talked about that one. And then on page 8, like her brother, she is ill, talking about Lady Madeline. How is her illness the opposite of her brother's? Okay, and I want you to think about it. Her brother's, it's all these illnesses of the senses, where hers are illnesses of the body. Okay, so you're looking at a mind and body difference. And then the summary, that one on page 10, it's what predictions do you make? So that can be as long as you want it to be. It could be 1 sentence, it could be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 sentences, okay? Then on page 11, what do Usher's actions after the death of his sister show about his character? Okay, so look back at what he does after her death, and then the box with character, what is this change and how does it affect him? So it's after Madeline's death, the narrator sees an observable change in his friend Usher. What is this change and how does it affect him? So that one you can really get from the text. And then suspense. On this page, page 11, how does the author use details about both Madeline and Roderick to create uncertainty? So uncertainty is another way of saying that suspense. You really don't know what's going to happen. How does he use their descriptions to create that? And then on page 12, dialogue. So, according to his response, those appearances which bewilder you are merely electrical phenomena not uncommon. How does the narrator view it? So, it's talking to the words that characters speak to one another or dialogue can reveal what they are like and how they view the events of the story. According to his words, and this is the unnamed this is Roderick Usher. Have you not seen it? Have you not seen it? How does Usher view the storm? Okay. Now remember, at that point, he's talking about Madeline. And according to his response, these appearances which bewilder you, and this is the narrator's response, are merely an electrical phenomena not uncommon. How does the narrator view it? So, Roderick sees what's going on with the storm as something supernatural, whereas the narrator sees it as just a natural phenomenon. So I kind of answered that one for you. But you have not read Frankenstein yet, but you may have seen the movie or you know basically about Frankenstein. And so with Frankenstein, they used electricity to bring the dead to life, the Frankenstein, the monster that Dr. Frankenstein had created. And I think this is kind of an allusion to that story where this whole storm is bringing Lady Madeline back. I could be wrong, but that's just my assumption. All right. Oh, and then the last one, last couple, well, page 13, you've got your questions on character. How does this treatment reflect his treatment of Usher throughout the rest of the story? So it's, how does the narrator treat Usher on the night of the storm? Well, he's very nice to him and tries to help calm him down. And then parallelism. So how does Poe use parallelism in this section of the story as the narrator reads aloud from the mad tryst of Sir Lancelot Canning? What effect does this parallelism create? Now remember, the sounds that are happening in the story are actually, the narrator believes he's hearing them outside the bedroom. All right, and then we move down to textual evidence. And we talked about this one, what evidence earlier in the text suggests that Lady Madeline was buried alive. And think about the theme of the story. The narrator describes Usher as a victim to the terrors he had anticipated. It offers an explanation of Usher's downfall. What does it suggest about the theme of the story? Okay. All right, guys. Good luck again on these. Do your best on